Good evening, you're watching World Talks and I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Romania's political landscape has been rocked by a surprise presidential election result, with hard-right NATO critic Georgescu unexpectedly leading in the first round. Georgescu will face center-right reformist Elena Lasconi in a runoff that could reshape Romania's pro-Western stance. His meteoric rise raises questions about voter discontent, TikTok-driven campaigns, and the future of Romania's alliances. Joining us today on TVP World to explore these dynamics is David Carstens, retired U.S. Army colonel. Good evening and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. So what do you think that Georgescu's unexpected, many say, success in the first round of Romania's presidential election tell us about the political landscape in the country?
Well, a couple things. I think, first of all, it was a revenge vote, shall we say, from the constituents of the major parties, discontent for what's going on in Romania related to the economy. You know, in 1992, James Carville, who very successfully supported President Bill Clinton's campaign, said it's all about the economy, stupid, and he was absolutely right. You know, here in Romania, you have a growing economy, but when you go to the rural areas, very difficult to see that. And so I think there was a lot of discontent with the two major political parties, and certainly Georgescu managed to capitalize on this. But the one thing that you didn't mention, and I would not want to throw this out at all in the conversation, is I think this is just a great example of yet another Russian hybrid attack on Eastern Europe. I think this is a way of Putin to keep Eastern Europe destabilized.
Oh, make no mistake, sir. Make no mistake. I was actually getting there as well, further in the conversation, but I'm very happy that you mentioned that now.
Absolutely. So economy and certainly Russian interference. Those are the two key areas.
We know that Georgescu has openly criticized NATO. If he was to take office of the president of Romania, how do you think this would, how this would affect the relationship of the country in terms of foreign policy? And what would be the outcome for Ukraine and the EU?
Well, look, Romania is such a strong NATO ally. I served in Romania both as a member of the U.S. government, and now I'm living and working here as a private citizen. I served alongside Romanian soldiers in Afghanistan, and it's a country that I dearly love. I can only hope that the strength of those outside of the office of the presidency will hold the day here. By the way, I hope that they will band together before a Georgescu presidency would even happen and back Lasconi in this East-West fight against Georgescu. But, you know, let's say he was elected. I certainly think you'd see some changes, particularly in Romania's support to Ukraine. I think Romania would become a bit more transactional as it relates to work in NATO and its relationship with other NATO allies. And that is absolutely something that we need to prevent.
I'm happy that you mentioned this because Romania shares the longest border with Ukraine and has been a vital ally when it comes to cooperation with NATO. Do you think that potential Georgescu's presidency could actually change that cooperation drastically?
Well, look, you know, the president certainly plays a role in Romanian politics, but let's be clear, the role of the president in Romania is a semi-executive role, and he's got significant decision-making powers over national security. So and judicial appointments. So there is a possibility for all that. I just hope the rest of Parliament and certainly Romania's very strong national intelligence service would save the day when it would come to support of Ukraine, and there would be more reasons, say, in some of the other branches of government. But you know, there is that possibility. You know, you did mention the 600-kilometer plus border that Romania shares with Ukraine, and certainly the areas of conflict. I think in a let's say in a post-war Ukraine, You would certainly want Romania involved when it comes to, say, patrolling a buffer zone or something of that nature. Certainly you want Romania involved in keeping its foot on the pedal of the gas when it comes to supporting Ukraine and denying Russians any more territory. And yes, I think in the case of a Georgescu presidency, this could all be at risk.
When speaking about Georgescu's stance towards NATO, he called the NATO missile defense system, I quote, a shame of diplomacy. What do you think are implications of such rhetoric when it comes to security partnerships, defense partnerships of Romania?
I think it's dangerous. I think it's irresponsible. And I think it shows the uneducated nature by which Georgescu is focused on foreign policy and promoting this to the people. Look, the strength of NATO is the strength of Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. And any time you make rhetoric against the alliance, it shows cracks that Putin very much wants to capitalize on. Georgescu is very much playing into the hands of Putin when it comes to making statements about the alliance or the anti-ballistic missile capability at Devaselu or whatever his comments may be. But, he's playing into the hands of Putin. He's playing into the hands of conspiracy theorists. It makes for good press. But if you understand the science and you understand that the NATO alliance is the greatest alliance certainly in modern history, one that has kept us out of war for decades, you would know that his stance is one of an uneducated politician, and one can only hope he does not rise to the presidency.
I wanted to touch upon the subject of hybrid warfare that you mentioned earlier in this interview. Are we certain that this is something that has to do with those tactics that Russia has tried to introduce in different countries? I mean, we had the referendum in Moldova, we had the presidential election in Moldova. There's been a flurry of elections happening all across the board. Do you think it's yet another Russian stunt, and how successful are they?
So look, I spent 30 years in the U.S. Army as an intelligence professional, and rarely can you say, for sure, or I'm positive, or this is a 100% fact. But beyond a reasonable doubt, when you look at the evidence, when you look at what has occurred in Romania, a nobody out of nowhere rising to this potential position of power, you have to give
on
credence
TikTok,
to the
no
fact
less.
that this was
on TikTok.
On TikTok.
He said that he did not spend on his presidential campaign, which seems to be baffling a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah, a nobody out of nowhere on TikTok ascending to a runoff for the presidency of Romania. So, and even when you look at these TikTok videos, very professionally done, really well crafted to focus on a segment of the Romanian population. So, regardless of the articulation of support or no support, I mean, he's getting some help, right? And then, of course, once these TikTok videos go viral, then it becomes the place of the Russian trolls, et cetera, to continue to promote these videos, to put comments on it, et cetera. And again, I'm no longer in the business of analyzing this from a national security point of view, but there's precedent for this. And you only have to look as far as the referendum in the Republic of Moldova. And this is what the Russians are best at. They take something like a TikTok video, they send it viral, they create the momentum in the, shall we say, less than educated portions of the population. And this is what Georgescu managed to do, and I am positive he got Russian help.
Thank you so much, David Carstens, retired U.S. Army colonel, being my guest on the show. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. And so this would be all for now here on World Talks, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World, as we'll be back in just a moment with more news and features.